other positive side. But then on the negative side, we still have 16 companies listed on Nasdaq Helsinki where we don't have a single female in the board. So obviously still room for improvement. And then we look at the board memberships. 30% of our board members are female. So this too it's been increasing over the last 10 years, but lately maybe not so rapidly. So whether this is good enough or not, up for discussion. In the countries where we see quotas, it's typically the quota is set at 40%. So I guess that could be, or I would say that maybe should be the aim here as well. But then again, I would very much like to see this to be a market-driven development, and hence that I'll be discussing actually now. So certainly for Nasdaq, I mean, diversity, we've been kind of seeing that as a fairly important and increasingly important item for listed companies, and obviously, like many other companies lately, also Nasdaq has kind of spent some time. In addition to the having a vision and mission for the company, we've now been kind of, I think this happened a couple of years ago, we kind of spent some time discussing that. Well, why is it exactly that we exist? What is the purpose? And for Nasdaq, you can see it here, and basically my main kind of point here is that you can see that we have a lot of kind of diversity-related words here. We talk about inclusive growth, we talk about equitable opportunities, we talk about a sustainable world, we talk about people of all backgrounds to be able to reach their full potential. So you can see that the way we've defined the reason for Nasdaq and also Nasdaq Helsinki, the exchange in Finland, to exist, it actually has a lot of kind of diversity-related angles. So this, as a starting point, I think explains then the recent initiatives we've taken. And the first one is from our US markets, which is basically the biggest, in many measures, the largest equity market in the world. So now in December of last year, we announced some could say a fairly radical proposal to our listing rules. It's still pending with the US regulator SEC, but what we filed is a proposal that states that going forward, all Nasdaq listed companies should firstly, they should disclose the board composition, i.e. basically when it comes to the board diversity aspects, i.e. the number of females in the board. And then secondly, and maybe more importantly, our proposal states that going forward, all of our Nasdaq listed companies in the US would have to either comply or explain why they do not have at least 2 diverse directors in the board. And to be more specific, the proposal states that one of the members should be female, and then the other one should come from a underrepresented minority. And then we've detailed exactly what it means. So it is people of color and then also the folks from different sexual minorities. So this is now pending with the SEC, but with this we really try to get more attention to this this development, and so far I would say it's been mainly taken fairly well. A lot of support from our listed companies in the US, and right now it seems like this will be actually approved by the SEC, but certainly it is still pending. So we'll see. But yeah, it's to me at least a fairly kind of radical proposal, and as far as I understand, we are at least on the markets that I follow, we are very much leading the pack with this initial. Then, if we turn to the Nordics, the Nordic markets that Nasdaq operates here in Finland, Sweden, and Denmark, and the Baltic countries, as well as Iceland. Also in December, we announced a collaboration with a non-profit, non-political foundation called Albright. that is very much set up to advance diversity. And we kind of established a collaboration with Albright, where we will now, beginning of this year, we will initiate board training and management team training for our listed companies on the topic of diversity. And with this initiative, our aim is to really gain and get more attention to diversity and the benefits of diverse boards and management teams. And also we are realizing that listed companies are kind of a minority of all companies in the world. So we actually partnered with the Nordic Venture Capital Associations in Sweden, Finland, Denmark on this initiative. So this training will also be available to listed companies, which I think is very good, because obviously, I mean, listed companies typically, when it comes to transparency, in many ways we are kind of taking the lead, and rightly so. But I think it's good if we're able to also then promote diversity in companies who have not yet decided to list their shares. So these are, and yeah, maybe worth mentioning as well that one reason why we chose in the Nordics this kind of a training approach is that already for 10+ years in the Nordic Corporate Governance Code, we've already had this kind of a comply or explain requirement to have diversity in the board. So we felt that this might be the right kind of a approach in the Nordics to take, as opposed to we certainly, maybe I'm not disclosing too much if I mention that we also did discuss kind of following the US initiative by potentially increasing or proposing to increase the requirement from at least one female board member to maybe 2, but for now we decided to go with this Albright cooperation, and because I, for one at least, as I think I mentioned already, I would very much like to see this advance through kind of market-driven voluntary initiatives, as opposed to mandating companies to take steps, because certainly, as I guess we all know, this is there are different views around this, and of course some folks fairly strongly feel that it should be the owner's right to decide who sits in the board without policies limiting that. So that is the balance we need to try to kind of handle also going forward. But these were my prepared remarks to kick off the event. So certainly looking forward to a interesting discussion and further presentations. So thank you.
Thank you, Henrik. Great to hear that Nasdaq has taken a really big stand and also actions to foster inclusion and diversity. So, and as we all know, I think the approach of investors have a really big influence on what companies do. So good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's time to move on to actual results of the Nordic Business Diversity Index, which we will share with you with Suvi. A couple of practicalities. So you probably noticed that we've muted all participants. Please use the chat function, chat box, to ask questions and comment. And after the presentation of these results, we probably won't take immediately questions, but in the end we can discuss them if we have time. But after each commentary speech, we will pick up a couple of questions and ask them from the speakers. And we will record the session, as you probably noticed. So yes, let's move on. And of course, you're free to write in social media if you want. There are a couple of hashtags if you want to use. Okay, now we... Yep. So why this study exists? So this is basically our hobby, me and Suvi's hobby, to do this research. And we wanted to do this study because it was really like 2 years ago we started to look for information about companies and what kind of like is there diversity and how can we compare other companies to each other, and we couldn't find a lot of information. There were really good gender-based studies like the Chamber of Commerce and many other, but we actually couldn't really see the differences between the companies, actual companies. So we wanted to know and show what's the status of diversity, and we also wanted to look at diversity from multidimensional perspective and not only just a gender issue. So that's why we started this study. Here a bit busy slide, but about the scoring, just for you to tell you a little bit of background. So last year we published a study called Findix, which is basically we used the same scoring and an ideology methodology here, but it was only Nasdaq Helsinki listed companies, and now we added Stockholm and Copenhagen, so it's now Nordic Business Diversity Index. And we included companies with minimum 4 people in board or executive management teams for the scoring purposes, so that it's kind of fair to everyone. And then we also had to exclude companies who are not publishing enough public information about their board or executive management team members. So if you see a company who you see that it's on the large cap list or on the list that there should be there, it's probably one of these reasons why it's not in our study. And because of this, we actually looked at all 3 countries, Finland, Sweden, and Denmark. But since the Danish companies or the Nasdaq Copenhagen companies are not publishing enough, or they only few of the companies are publishing enough public information about all the background information of their boards and leadership teams, we couldn't score them. But we have included the Danish companies in the variable specific results, where we could just take a look at the amount of people. So all the results regarding Copenhagen are kind of like directionally. Okay, so that's about the background. And now to the results. Let's first take a look at Nasdaq Helsinki top 5. And the winner is Wärtsilä in large cap category, and Nokia and Nordea second and third. And all these top 3 companies made clear progress, especially Nokia and Nordea. And Nordea's big improvements were in executive management team moving from all male group to 4 female members who also have business responsibilities. So I would say well done Nordea. And Nokia has also, I think, they improved their scoring quite a lot. And a mid-cap winner is Rovio, now 2nd time in a row. So congrats for keeping up the good work. And Marimekko is 2nd, Uponor 3rd. Both companies also made progress. So you can see the little arrows there. So if the company has made progress, the arrow is up, and if it's declined there or went down with the scoring, the arrow is down, and if there's no arrow, it's the same. And with there are a couple of also newcomers to the list of the Nasdaq list. And the small cap winners are Incap, Biohit, and Optomed. And we have a couple of newcomers in the list of small cap companies. And because of our methodology, it is possible to get to the list of top 5 even with all May groups like Incap has. So because we're looking at the multidimensional approach. So, but anyway, so the good point here is that if, for example, Incap would improve in gender diversity, it would be a really, really good level in this scoring. So congratulations for all the winners. And generally speaking, if we look at different categories and sizes of companies, large cap companies score higher than others. I guess it's the same trend as we could see in the gender diversity studies. And according to one of our report commentators, Professor Anna-Maija Lämpsä from Jyväskylä University, she says that this is typical as the range of differences tends to be more salient in big businesses compared to small and middle-sized companies. And a simple explanation is that big businesses who are operating globally have more employees and bigger recruitment pool. Another explanation is that big companies have exercised systematically diversity management initiatives already for some decades, while the topic is newer to smaller companies. So this is what she says for the explanation. Then if we look at top 5 large cap Finland and Sweden, the winner of large cap category in Sweden is Nordic Entertainment Group, NENT Group, and congratulations for that. We will hear later NENT's comments from Sahar Kubesmit, who is here today with us. And second and third places go to EQT and Medicover, Attendo and Kinnevik very close after them. And on average, if we look at compare the top 5 of Finnish and Swedish companies, the Swedish large cap companies score a bit higher than Finnish large cap companies. And the highest board points go also to Swedish company NENT, who is the winner of this category. But if we look at the total points, Finland wins because it's always a competition between Finland and Sweden. so in the total points, Wärtsilä is the winner of the all. And one interesting thing about this is that the sectors where the companies are from are a bit different in Finland and Sweden. So we have telecom representatives in both categories, Nokia and Nordic Entertainment Group. But then the Swedish list is occupied by financial and healthcare sector, while the Finnish list has two industrials sector representatives and no healthcare companies, even though the healthcare as an industry scores the highest in industry comparison, and we will look at that a bit in a bit. So this is how the total scores look at. Then here's the total, like how the total points are split in different point categories. And as said earlier, large companies score average higher than mid and small companies. So if I look at the green color and the light blue color, they're more on the right, those pillars. And also small cap companies have more male dominance, and as also previously said in Henrik's presentation. And also small cap companies are less international. And this situation remains the same if we compare to last year's results. And then when we compare the total index points of large cap companies in Finland and Sweden, it seems that Finnish large cap companies are a bit ahead in diversity compared to their Swedish counterparts, because 84% of Finnish large cap companies and 62% of Swedish large cap companies achieve at least 50 points. So there's quite a big difference. And I have to admit that we did not expect this result. We of course expected, I don't know why, it's because of our unbiased unconscious bias. So we thought that of course Sweden is ahead of Finland, but now in these figures when we look at it, it looks like Finland is a bit ahead. But there's also more variance in Swedish large companies than in Finnish large companies. The lowest points in Finland are 35 and in Sweden 22.5. And as we can see, none of the companies reach 75 points or more. So there is still work to do. So then when we look at boards versus executive teams, I guess this is again same situation as earlier, and as said in other studies that boards are far more diverse than executive teams. So it's in better position there, and also large cap companies tend to be more diverse than mid and small cap companies. So we think that all that kind of the market association, the code, the market association code has a lot to do with this, so that the boards have started to do the work before than now also they're paying attention to the management teams, executive teams. Then a bit busy table about the industry comparison. So we carried out the comparison in industries where at least 4 companies are in. So we actually combined energy and utilities to be able to list them. And this is only Nasdaq Helsinki and Stockholm companies. Healthcare industry seems to be the most diverse, and the average score is really high compared to the other industries. And industrials and technology score lowest, both in average below 50 points. But industrial sector is quite interesting because there's also a huge variation because it has the highest score and also one of the lowest scores in the sample. So there clearly room for improvement in both sectors, but especially in the technology sector. So they clearly are in the lower level in this space. But let's then move to variable specific results. So Suvi.
Thank you, Susanna, for presenting the results. And now we will move on to the variable specific findings. And here, as Susanna already said, we have included the findings that we were able to find from the Danish large cap companies. But please do keep in mind that the Danish figures are indicative, and there might be some if we would have the full data available, then the findings might be a bit different. When looking at the gender balance of the entire data, it is quite clear that men are still the majority in the highest executive positions. And when we look at the large cap companies and the composition there, you can see that it's more or less on the same level. Looking at the data from Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. But when we go to the smaller caps and the smaller company sizes, there is a clear difference in the gender balance, and Finnish small cap companies and the Danish large cap companies actually having the lowest or the gender balance with, or least balanced gender balance. Comparing to the results of last year, the number of females has actually increased in 3 Finnish groups. The board of directors and executive teams of large cap companies, as well as the executive teams of mid cap companies. But the levels in the small cap companies have remained the same. None of the companies in the sample have an all-male board of director. But in the executive teams, all other caps, with the exception of Finnish large cap companies, still have also executive teams with only all-male members. Moving on to the age-specific findings. Here you can look at the different bubbles and the sizes of the bubbles, and it does become quite clear that the 1960s is the most common decade to be born when you look at the members both in the board of directors and in the executive teams. This ages, of course, can be explained due to natural reasons. We don't have 1940 borns anymore in the executive teams because of retirement, and their amount is also getting smaller in the board of directors. And you can see the same type of trend already in the people born in the 1950s. Their amount is quite small in the executive teams, but then again, their amount in the board of directors is still quite significant, especially in some of the company groups. What can also be noted that the amount of younger generations is still quite limited, which again, of course, can be explained with experience and the kind of career you need to maybe have to move on to executive positions and leadership positions. But of course, there might also be a little bit of room for maybe courage in the executive teams to allow also younger generations to have room there. Then looking at nationality, overall of all the variables that we looked at, nationality is the one with the least diversity. And these, the figure here shows it quite clearly that regardless of the company size or country, the home country is very dominated by in the nationalities. And the smaller the company, the less international it is, and this is very evident at looking at the Helsinki mid and small cap company results. But when we look at the large cap companies, and this is actually something that came a little bit as a surprise for us, that the Swedish companies, they have the largest amount of Swedish nationalities in their leadership positions. And the difference between, for example, with the Finnish large cap companies is quite significant here. And also something that we noted is that the Finns and the Danes tend to rely on the Swedish members in their executive teams and boards, but the Swedes, they do not have their neighboring Nordics in the top 3 nationalities. Going on to education, this is a rather, how should I say, not surprising slide. No differences compared to last year. Business administration is still dominating very clearly the educational background of leadership positions, and then engineering and law background coming as second and third. What is still good to note is that the amount of other educations, it is over 10% in all of the countries and all of the cap sizes. And here in other, we do have quite a bit of different educational backgrounds. So that is, of course, a positive signal that something might be changing in that as well. But to end this part of the results is that kind of our messages. What do we have in mind after doing this study and before we move on to hearing the comments of others? Is that more or less inclusion and diversity, they're now a very hot topic in the business agenda, but clearly there is now the time that we do need to start acting. And based on the study results, it's very clear that the leadership positions, they continue to be predominantly held by men born in the 60s with a degree in business administration and economics and being citizens of the company's headquartered country. The gender gap, it's closing, but very, very slowly. And what we really would like to see is that we kind of not to ask anymore that why is the situation like this, but rather start asking how can we really start to make these positions more accessible for women and female candidates? How can we start making all the way from schools and academic education? How can we start making these positions more accessible for the women. In the report, you can find more information about how the female leadership positions have actually been divided between the countries. And then finally, a very important message regarding representation and why it really matters. It's really crucial when we think about the societal significance company leadership can have, and what is the signal that we are sending to people who are not in the majority. That is it really so that opportunity and success is only limited to a closed and homogeneous group? Or do we want to rather send a message that and to encourage everyone to learn about people who are different from us and really kind of counter our unconscious bias and start making the needed changes to kind of make this group more diverse. Thank you so much. And then now we will move on to our comments.
Yes. So now we will have very interesting commenting speakers, and also I'd like to mention that our partner in this study has been Board Professionals Finland, and Päivi Jokinen will give her comment later in the agenda. And I'll just remind you that if you have questions to the speakers, please write them to the chat box, and we will select a few of them to be asked from the speakers after they have their presentation. So first speaker is Shadia Rask, and Shadia is a research manager at Finnish Institute for Health and Welfare. For us Finns, we know the letters THL pretty well at these times. And Shadia has a PhD degree, and she's a doctor of philosophy, public health from University of Helsinki. And her expertise areas are, among others, discrimination and equality, as well as immigration, diversity, and population health. And her duties at the Finnish Institute for Health and Welfare include non-discrimination in working life, and she's a member of THL's expert group for cultural diversity. So, Shadia, please. I'll put the first slide.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you, Henrik, for the opening words and the presentation and invitation to comment, Suvi and Susanna. And hello to all of you listening remotely. So before I share some comments on the Nordic Business Diversity Index, I will still briefly introduce myself. We can go to the next slide. Perfect. So as you already heard in the kind introduction, my name is Shadia Rask. I work as a research manager at the Finnish Institute for Health and Welfare, and my background is in public health, but my PhD on diversity and health in the population led me to the topic of D&I a few years back. And currently I lead 2 projects in THL, both focusing on diversity, inclusion, and non-discrimination in the labor market. And I'm really happy to be part of this event today, because I believe that efforts to increase diversity and inclusion benefit from closer collaboration and exchange of ideas between the public and private sector. So in my experience, those of us working in the public sector are talking about immigration and integration, and those of you working in the private sector are more often talking about the attraction and retention of international talents. And we haven't been communicating with each other enough, even though the need for diversity, inclusion, and non-discrimination in the labor market is a common denominator. So I'm really happy to be here and to share 3 reflections with you. We can go to the next.
Yeah.
So firstly, I want to welcome this report and the information it brings, since data-driven discussion on diversity and inclusion especially in the Nordic context, is much needed. The comparison to last year's Findex 2020 results is important, as it gives us a sense of the big picture and also the direction and speed of where we're heading. I also see importance in the comparison across studies and publications. For example, THL's Gender Matters project has produced information on gender equality in the corporate sector and political decision making. And the big picture looks the same. Also, I find that the indicator-specific findings of this report are very interesting and a needed first step in measuring diversity of boards and executive management. However, to observe power imbalances more accurately, we need to look further and understand how gender, age, and other individual characteristics also intersect and overlap. Let's move on to the second reflection. I want to touch on the topic of representation. On the one hand, diverse representation is so important. As the quote says, you can't be what you can't see. On the other hand, diverse representation is not enough without an understanding and implementation of inclusion and anti-racism. I find the focus on representation in senior leadership essential. For example, Nike states in their 2019 report on representation in leadership that their efforts to increase representation focus on the vice president level, because representation at this level provides a foundation to grow representation at all levels. And this is important. How our boards and leaders look today reflect the possibilities and paths that seem possible and available to our children and youth tomorrow. Let's move on to the third reflection. This increasing awareness and interest in D&I must be followed by strategic, long-term action towards diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the most important tool for this is equality planning, which cannot be successful without the support and active involvement of leadership. There are no quick fixes, and one size does not fit all. Still, I want to share with you some concrete ideas that were first experimented in 2 recruitments to the Manifold More project last fall, and which are now being implemented more broadly in our organization in THL. So concretely, to increase diversity through recruitment, we have used the diversity clause in vacancy announcements to explicitly encourage applicants belonging to minorities to apply. We have advertised our open positions through social media. For example, the Facebook group International Working Women of Finland, to make sure that information about our vacancies reach people from diverse backgrounds. We have critically assessed our language requirements. For example, the researcher positions were made possible also for non-native Finnish speakers. And we have applied a form of anonymous recruiting by incorporating the anonymous evaluation of a research idea paper into our recruitment process. So even before we started looking at the CVs and motivation letters, we evaluated a 1-page anonymous sample text. And by taking these actions, we received 120 applications to the 2 project researcher positions. And most importantly, the pool of applicants was extremely talented and diverse. Our applicants spoke 26 different first languages, and 1 in 4 had a PhD degree. So it's no longer acceptable to think that talented professionals of different backgrounds would simply not exist in Finland. We employers need to do better to recruit diversity and foster inclusion in our workplaces. To conclude, we can move to the next slide. Thanks. This report can be considered a second call for action. But how do we make sure that this call is heard? Usually, those of us attending and speaking in events like this already agree with the cause and need. We need to do more than just preach to the choir. The happy hype around D&I is not enough to push equality and inclusion forward. We need to be bold and also have uncomfortable discussions about racism, sexism, and the unconscious biases that we all hold. I want to finish with 2 thoughts from inspirational reading on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Firstly, BBC's Director of Diversity, June Sarpong, challenges, looking at your company's top leaders will tell you what it institutionally believes. And finally, Laura Morgan Roberts and Anthony J. Mayo conclude in their article in the Harvard Business Review, diverse organizations and teams outperform their homogeneous peers. Still, the fundamental argument for the fight for diversity, equity, and inclusion must be a moral one. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share reflections and comments, and congratulations for the publication.
Thank you, Shadia. Really good comments and insights, and also thank you for giving concrete examples of fostering diversity inclusion. This was good, and like you said, it's really difficult. It's really difficult to get not the happy choir here in these kind of events. We honestly, we've been trying now in 2 years to get more male speakers. Really difficult. And also, if we look at the participant list, it's more females, and also I think most of who are here, we already know the topic and are the other kind of working for it. So how to get those who are not interested in? Thank you. So I think we have a couple of questions.
Yes. This is actually, I'm not sure, Shadia, was this actually directly to you, but I will ask this question from you because I think this is something that you can really well reflect on. There's a quite recent study from McKinsey, which has found that companies with most ethnically and culturally diverse boards worldwide are 43% more likely to experience higher profits. And this is very much what you just reflected on. And the question is that, are these the kind of benefits or kind of hard facts that should be talked about more to really to move these issues forward in the Finnish boards and executive teams to change?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. On the one hand, I do think that these are the arguments that we need, and we definitely need more data and studies, because this McKinsey study is the one that's most often cited. At the same time, I feel that sort of the business case arguments are not enough. We do need, as I close, sort of the moral argument. We need to tie the topic of diversity, inclusion, and equity to our views and like strategically to make sure that equality planning isn't something that's just done separately, isn't something that's important just because of profit's sake, but also because we're committed to it through our values and strategy.
All right, thank you for this. I think we can move
Yes,
on
we need to move on. Thank you. So our next speaker is Anneli Karlsted. And Anneli is definitely one of the pacemakers and pioneers, if not the one, in the topic of inclusion and diversity in Finnish business scene. And Nokia has made several visible commitments to foster inclusion and diversity and acting accordingly in many ways. So Anneli, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you, Shadia, for your remarks. I really appreciate them and really feel them strongly that they are exactly the right ones. Also, the way you delivered them made me almost emotional. So for Nokia, this is a bittersweet day in a sense that sweet in this index report is coming out. And it's great that it tracks diversity in a wide sense and allows us to shine. And as a professor at the Jyväskylä University said, for companies like ours, where we have 160 nationalities represented in almost 120 countries, it's quite natural to tap into that diversity. It's a bitter day because later today at 1 o'clock Central European time, the Bloomberg Gender Equality Index is coming out, and Nokia dropped under average in the industry ranking there. So it is still a sign of the fact that we women, because Bloomberg just tracks gender and gender equality deeds within the companies and data. So it shows that because the layer of women and in technology companies is still so thin, that changes in there whatever change it is always a big change if women leave or if they are not growing and developing within the organization. I would like to just, from a company perspective, shed light on why participation in indices like this, like the Nordic Business Diversity Index or Bloomberg Gender Equality Index, is important. Especially the Bloomberg Index provides our investors a huge amount of transparency on where the companies stand. They have a full perspective to the data of the companies, and more investors, which makes me really happy, are interested in the environmental, social, and governance related target setting in the companies and follow them and make hopefully more informed decisions based on them. And from a company perspective, again, if I turn it around, this means, of course, that we can tap into more, it opens more opportunities for tapping into investments, of course, as well. One aspect in this Nordic Business Diversity Index study, which I would like to raise as well, which Shadia perhaps did not touch so much upon, is the age factor. And in our company as well, the executive board is made of pretty homogeneous age groups, and there is clearly one missing, and it's the millennials, which more and more, if we think of a strategy perspective, the companies, their knowledge wouldn't, and their experience would be needed much more. They are more aware of cultural issues, more aware of environmental issues, social happenings, and their insights in the organizations would be invaluable. Also, their co-creation skills, how they involve people, include people, are on a different level than the previous generation. So change in that aspect is needed, and I'm sure that it will also lead to a better improvement and change in decision making. I think that's pretty much what I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you, Anneli. I think we have a couple of questions.
There was one question which came in earlier already, and I think that Anneli, this might be a good one to ask you actually. How do you see when we talk about in many of these studies which are coming out and like this Bloomberg index that you pointed out, the focus is very much on gender equality, and of course that's something which is very important. But then when we look at multidimensional diversity, we do of course need to realize, especially if we look at the nationality point of view, that we do need to realize that what is the kind of the national diversity, and how do we kind of make these synchronize in a sense, or can companies maybe take some additional steps to make the leadership compositions more diverse than what the national kind of situation is? What do you have thoughts on this?
Yes, I do. And we were actually, because as many of you know, and we have publicly said it, Nokia is going through a huge change, and our leadership team has quite recently changed as well. And so we just, with my inclusion diversity team at Nokia, we just did an exploration on different diversity aspects of the new leadership team and level below. And nationality is, there's a difference between ethnicity and nationality. And I think that is important to note. It's difficult to, from within a company, to track ethnicity. I think you need to look at it perhaps when you recruit new leaders through experience, cultural backgrounds, experience in different cultural backgrounds. As Shadia was mentioning also, the language knowledge, you know, it tells a lot about your cultural competency, and perhaps also about your cultural tolerance. And I think what could boards do, and Pekka Lundmark, our CEO, just visited the employee resource groups on Friday, which are the bottom-up employee groups that we foster at Nokia. We have 14 different ones. And he was asking what kind of an advisory board could they provide to him in terms of bringing these different diverse aspects, also nationality-wise, culture-wise, ethnicity-wise to him. And there was a discussion about that. No decisions made, and so, but there is clearly, and I think by research, we know that there is, there are good practices related to sort of shadow boards, which can bring much more wider perspectives.
Thank you, Anneli. Excellent points on this.
Yes, thank you. So our next guest is Sahar Kubbe-Smith from Nordic Entertainment Group, the winner of the Stockholm Large Cap category. And Sahar is the Executive Vice President, Chief People and Culture Officer at NENT Group. Sahar is also the sponsor of NENT Group's Challengers Talent Program, and in 2018 was named Female Role Model of the Year at Sweden's Telecom Gala Industry Awards. And Sahar will be interviewed by Suvi. Suvi, please, and Sahar, I'll just stop sharing the presentation. So you're both on the screen.
Yes, thank you, Sahar, once again for joining us this morning in this launch event, and of course congratulations on the wonderful score of NENT Group, and it was really our pleasure to be able to include the Swedish large cap companies this year in the index. I must say that when I started looking at the website of your company, I was very impressed of how inclusion and diversity and the really strong commitment to advancing those themes, not just in your kind of HR policies, but also in how in the business what you actually do, and that was very clear. So please, we would be thrilled to hear what kind of steps have you actually taken in NENT Group to promote these themes and take these forward.
Thank you so much for the great presentation, for the great report, and also I'm so happy, of course, for the results to start with. I just wanted to start with thanking you for pronouncing my name perfectly. That is very, very, very unusual, but both of you did, and I'm happy about that. That is actually inclusion. So you live like you learn. So thank you for that. To go back to your question about what kind of the steps we've taken, obviously, I think that the why has played a very important role for us and is the reason of why we see concrete results in this area. For us, of course, it is the right thing to do from a morale perspective, as Shadia was mentioning, and it is also a business decision to invest in the area of equality, diversity, and inclusion, as we call it, the EDI. And we see that our focus leads to better decisions, greater creativity, increased engagement, and a sense of belonging and purpose among our people. So equality, diversity, and inclusion have always been a part of our main priorities, as you mentioned, is a part of our every part of our business, and we believe it's a necessity to reach our ambition the coming years. We aim to become the European streaming champ and the most equal and diverse streaming company in the world. That is our ambition. So equality is also one of our core values, and we include diversity and inclusion in that value. And I am so proud of the way we concluded and we developed our values. And I think that also plays an important part for how we all in the company are accountable for promoting equality, diversity, and inclusion. So instead of hiring an agency helping us to set our values and produce a fancy slideshow, we did actually do the opposite. We did it in a crowdsourcing way. We engaged and involved every single employee in our company to set our values. And after 45 workshops, brainstorming, voting, and wording the values, we landed in 4 core values, equality being one of them. Another important step in the work has been to accelerate these efforts was appointing our first ever head of diversity and inclusion by the end of 2019, Mahmoud Osman, who is also joining us here today. And like any other area in our business, we have a strategy for equality, diversity, and inclusion. We have key areas that we focus on. We have a roadmap with concrete actions and targets, and we closely monitor and follow up the performance. And we make our decisions based on many different sources of data. So we are data inspired in this area as well as the other areas. And finally, I would like to share some examples with you of the key actions that we actually have taken. So last year, at the end of last year, we held an EDI training, including unconscious bias for all our employees, and already 70% of our people are trained in this area, and we of course aim for 100% this year. We also launched a mentorship program with a focus on women empowerment, and we are going to scale that in 2021. And we created a framework for how to work with EDI in our content, and we are committed to increase our investment in international series and women's sports rights in 2021. And last but not least, a week ago, we announced two new female appointments to group executive level, making 50-50 gender split in the senior leaders reporting to our CEO, Anders Jensen, which is of course an important milestone in our work to establish an equal and diverse leadership. So equality, diversity, and inclusion have always been a part of our main priorities at NENT, and we believe it's a necessity to be successful in our business going forward.
Thank you, Sahar, and thank you so much for telling in detail what you have done, because very often there might be a tendency to think that if we just decide that we will be inclusive and we will just decide that we will start promoting diversity, then it just will happen. But that is not the case. It does require a lot of work. And this, what you've done, your vision and your values through crowdsourcing and 45 workshops with your staff members, I salute you. That is wonderful, and certainly sets a bar now for other companies. After all this work that you've done and how you've really embedded these issues in your business strategies and so forth, what kind of benefits have you seen? We've been talking about the business case, and it does seem to be something that is attractive, of course, naturally to businesses. So what kind of benefits have you seen?
Yeah, so as one of the leading organizations in entertainment, our aim is to reflect the societies that we live and work in so that our stories are engaging and relevant for as many people as possible. And we believe there is a strong correlation between successful EDI work and business growth. So equality, diversity, and inclusion being represented in our processes certainly helps bridging the gaps and utilizing the opportunities that come with including all types of people and perspectives, of course. And we believe an equal and inclusive organization culture have many internal benefits, such as increased engagement, well-being among our employees, and EDI is the foundation for our continued development, and we work hard to attract the right talent as cultural ads. That means people who believe in our why and what and sign off on our culture and values, and also add to our culture in a positive way. We have 49 different nationalities in our company. 94% of our people represented in our yearly employee survey, they say that they can be themselves at work. 87% say that they have the same opportunities regardless of gender identity or expression, ethnicity, religion or other belief, disability, sexual orientation, or age. So we are proud that we have come a long way in our work with equality, diversity, and inclusion. And at the same time, we are not resting, and we will keep driving to improve our results and build the most equal, diverse, and inclusive company in the streaming sector, step by step, brick by brick, together with our superstar people. That's our ambition.
Thank you for sharing these, because this is really what you just said underlines the importance of building an inclusive organizational culture, that you just start kind of counting on Excel that how many different type of people you are able to recruit. That's not enough, because that will not be sustainable. So these results that you get from your employee survey really does reflect that you have been doing the correct things. I have one final question before we move on to the chat. Just quickly, of course, here in Finland, we are really interested to hear what is the hot topics in Sweden now. What are the things that are being discussed concerning inclusion and diversity in the business agenda? Are there some kind of issues which are now on the top of the agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would like to mention three things that we see at hot topics. First of them being the emergence of tech tools. So in the EDI space, for example, artificial intelligence in recruitment processes to secure totally unbiased requirements, we see that. And although still very, very early, we will soon see a spike of new tools within this field that can help organizations become less subjective in their processes, and by that accelerate their efforts in the equality, diversity, and inclusion area. So that was the first hot topic, and the next one is creative collaborations. And I think Shadia also mentioned collaboration as important, and increased collaboration among many groups and businesses within our society as they see the benefits of coming together to create new ways of accelerating EDI and developing best practices. In the content area, we've already seen some examples in Sweden, such as People of Film, where several institutes, counties, and companies have launched a platform and a database where companies can find diverse pool of people to hire within the film industry to increase diversity in the Swedish movie. So, and last but not least, accountability. Businesses are held accountable for their commitments to hire diverse talent, provide more opportunities for diverse employees, and other diversity-related matters. Consumers are more informed and will continue to create campaigns targeted companies that don't carry their weight in diversity, equality, and inclusion initiatives. And we will keep seeing investors and banks demanding action plans and results in this area before investing in companies. So those are the hot topics that I see.
Thank you. Really interesting. All three of them.
Thank you.
And certainly something that we will start following very closely. Susanna has been moderating the chat now. Do we have questions for Sahar?
We have a lot of comments, but, and then there are a few questions, but everybody loves your energy and you have so good points.
Thank you.
I'll modify a little bit one question. You said that you're doing this a systematic employee survey to find out what's the situation in your company. But how important are kind of public studies, like if you think about Great Place to Work or these different kind of indexes? Do you follow them, and how important are them in your when you're following how you're doing?
Very, very good question. And of course we follow them. As I said, we work just in a data-driven way. We work in a data-inspired way, which means that we use a lot of different data sources to make good decisions. And obviously, if we want to become the most inclusive, equal, and diverse company in the world, we need to follow the indices to make sure that we are topping them. So very important for us moving forward for making better decisions.
Mm. Okay, and then there's been in different indexes and surveys, and here too, saying that the small companies are behind compared to the large companies. Do you have any view on that? And then also, do you have any advice for the smaller companies? Was it easy for you because just of your size or industry?
No, I think it is not easy, and it takes tireless efforts, and it takes very, very hard work. And I think, of course, with more resources, it is a little bit easier. But I think that just making sure that this is not a topic on the side of the business, it is a part of the business decisions, it makes it more easy. Having a strategy, following up the performance and so on, I think that is my best recommendation, to make it, to include it in all the processes and all the in everything that you do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have 1 minute? I would like to just share a story from an ethical perspective. We actually in 2019, like 2 years ago exactly, we launched our values after this crowdsourced process. And after that, one of our employees just contacted me, and he said that he wanted to change his name. His name was Martin, but that was not the name he was born with. That was the name he used because he didn't want to be discriminated. So he used that name for 11 years. His real name is Muhammad Ali, but he didn't want to use that because he felt that he would be discriminated. But after the launch of our values, for the first time, he contacted me and asked me, I want to change my name to my real name, the name I was born with. And obviously I got goosebumps and we contacted IT and to make sure that his name was represented in the systems. And this story, I just wanted to share this story because this is not just a business decision. It means a lot for the people to be themselves. We need to reflect the societies. We need to welcome everyone. And when we do that in an open way, people can be themselves. And when they can be themselves, they do the best works of their lives.
Oh, such a wonderful story. You
Thank
make
you.
me cry.
Yes.
Thank you, Sahara. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you
your
so much.
comments and speech, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Oh, and our last speaker is Päivi Jokinen. Oh, sorry, I'm a bit emotional. I'll put the slides back. Yes, and Päivi is a board professional herself, and also a board member of our collaboration partner, Board Professionals Finland, as well as chair of the board of European Women on Boards. Welcome, Päivi.
Thank you very much, Susanna, and lovely to be here. So actually, I am here today with 3 hats. I'll try to concentrate to keep them apart. So the first hat, of course, I'm a board member of Board Professionals Finland, and Board Professionals Finland was founded in 2006 to drive gender equality. So that's already 14, 15 years ago when this association was started. And at the time, we have seen from Henrik's numbers, the number of women in boards and management teams was quite low. And it's wonderful that we have seen so much progress. My second hat is the chair of European Women on Boards, which Board Professionals Finland then founded in 2013, together with Norway, France, and Belgium, also to support gender equality. And the reason why we went with Norway, France, and Belgium was that we felt that we need international friends and we need cooperation in this, and we need to talk to the European Commission, and we need to get our voice heard. And speaking with others through creative collaboration, as Sahar just mentioned, I believe that we have been able to push the envelope a little bit more even. And then my final third hat is that I am a board member of the small cap winner INCAP since 2018. This is a total coincidence. And of course, I did not know these results before I saw them yesterday, and I couldn't be more proud. So I will speak from these 3 perspectives. Last week, European Women on Boards launched the results of their Gender Diversity Index. And in our Gender Diversity Index, we study 668 Euro stocks added companies in Europe. So 18 different countries of Europe are represented in our index, and we are just looking at the numbers. So with the difference to the Bloomberg index that Anneli mentioned earlier, we are not looking at different qualitative aspects, but only the number of men and women in boards, executive levels, and in decision-making committees such as audit committee or remuneration committee or what other decision-making committees a company might have. And similar to what the ladies have done, we look at public sources, but also we send messages to all these 668 companies and ask them to verify the data. So it's a little bit more. Plus, we also ask them about their diversity and inclusion agendas to see whether there is a strategy in place, targets in place, action plans in place, and so on. And of course, you can look at the numbers in many different ways. We saw Henrik sharing percentages of women. Myself, I wrote down percentages of men. 72% of business leaders across these 668 companies are men, 72%. This leaves 28 to women, and I think this discrepancy is still huge. Of course, I want to be happy about the progress that has been made between our study in 2019 and 2020, but still 72%. 66% of board positions are men, so this is 34% for women, 2/3, 1/3. And what is even striking for my 10-year-old son is that 94% of the CEOs are men, 94%. So even a 10-year-old would say, this doesn't seem right, mommy. So there's definitely a lot to be done even in the gender perspective. But of course, I welcome this study, which is multidimensional. It's wonderful that we look at the other dimensions as well. And this is why Board Professionals Finland really wanted to support Suvi and Susanna in their good hobby of studying this, and also in thinking through what are the differences in the Nordic countries. Because in the Nordic countries, we are quite lucky. If I look at the Gender Diversity Index alone, Finland was now just surpassing Sweden to 4th position, Sweden in 5th position, Denmark clearly behind in 10th position out of the 18 countries that we studied. So these results are very much in line with what Suvi and Susanna have also found, that Finland, surprisingly to us Finns who are a bit humble about our culture, we always seem to think that the Swedes know it better, but now Finland was the country that made the most progress between 2019 and 2020 in terms of gender equality in our index. And of course, as a Finn, I couldn't be prouder. So it's not that Sweden is not doing a great job. They have many companies in the best practice leaders. So we collect a table of 20 best practice leaders and we interview those leaders during the year. So we try to find out exactly what Sahar was sharing with us. What is it that these companies do differently? And we want to share this with everybody who wants to listen. But so moving on from gender to this study, which is more wide and takes a larger perspective, and it's definitely needed. Sometimes I hear in Finland that, okay, let's forget about the gender topic, we can move on. I still think that in the light of the numbers that we saw from Henrik, we should not completely move on, but it's important that we include the other aspects as well. Last year also I talked quite a lot about inclusion and the feeling of being included or not included. I have been this year kind of during last year wondering about how inclusion could be measured. Diversity is quite easy to measure because it's numbers, but what about inclusion, which is about the heart? And I'm so glad that Sahar mentioned be themselves at work. Can you be yourself at work? And I have my personal experience from the small cap winner InCap. As I mentioned, I joined the board in April of 2018 together with 2 men. So I was the 3rd member in that board, and the 2 men were an engineer born in the 1950s and another engineer born in the 1970s, and then me, an economics major born in the 1960s. So you can see we were already a little bit diverse. And we came from diverse backgrounds. I came from marketing strategy, innovation, business leadership. The chair of the board came from investment banking background. The 3rd member was a previous CEO of InCap and also had a very big industrial background. And all of us, we fell into our places so nicely. We didn't have to talk about it, but we all had our plan in this InCap board. So we had our strengths that complemented each other. The chair, born in the 1950s, welcomed both of us with open arms. And I really felt like I could contribute. I could be myself and I could bring my opinions to the table, and they were truly appreciated. And this is something that is very difficult to measure, and I'm still wondering about how this could be done. In last year's board meeting, we included another woman to the board, and we were looking for competence, not a woman. We were looking for finance competence, and the second lady on INCAP board has a very strong background. Is also an economics major. Unfortunately, we have only engineers and economics people, but still, she was also born in the 1960s, so this golden era of board members. So now we have 2 women and 2 men, but as was pointed out, the management team, the executive team of INCAP is still all male. However, they are all male from different countries. We have a Finn, we have an Estonian, we have an Indian, we have a UK person and a Slovak person. This of course reflects the main countries where this company is active. But it makes me so happy that when we discuss together with the management team and in the board meetings, many times other people from the executive team are invited, and we hear their views and we understand the local conditions and local views differently. So it's definitely not an all Finnish board. So I have felt very, very good being part of this board. I hope I will get another term in April of this year when new board will be selected. I cannot really give you exact 45 workshops or the strategy or roadmap of action that we have utilized. It has somehow happened due to the fact that we were so diverse and that we were able to be ourselves on that board and in the executive team. So to conclude, I would say that I have been very lucky myself that I have lived a diverse life. And I read a quote just recently from Rosalind Hudnell, who is the early Intel Chief Diversity Officer. And it said, you cannot lead diversity if you do not live a diverse life. And it made me think of us here far, far away in the Nordics, that sometimes we are surrounded by homogeneous groups of people. If I look around, most of my friends are economics students. We played ultimate frisbee together and we still talk about sports. And I consciously try to make an effort to widen my life, also in the private sector, so that I would have other people around me, other options and perspectives and ways of seeing the world. So I invite everybody to look at your lives. Do you live a diverse life? And does it give you a chance to lead a diverse workforce? That's all from me.
Thank you, Päivi. Excellent points. And great the board professionals is our partner in here.
So happy to do so.
Yes.
Do we have any questions?
A lot of comments and making that are agreeing with your point about this, especially living a diverse life. There was an earlier question about like concrete measures. And now that you are a board member, what kind of, to modify this question a little bit, what kind of concrete measures you as a board member would like to see happening in, for example, INCAP now? Or is there something that you really have in the board agenda that you are trying to enhance in the organization more widely concerning inclusion and diversity?
Well, maybe I will reply a little bit more generically. We have interviewed those best practice leaders from 2019 Gender Diversity Index. And when we talk to them, it's absolutely clear that you need to have targets set. And if you drop following those targets, your results will drop. So as Sahar pointed out, there needs to be a strategy, there need to be targets, and without these targets, it's very likely that results will not be there. I was part of Kemira's management team in earlier days, and I remember when Kerttu Tuomas was our board member, and she would ask once a year when we had our strategy workshop that we must share the pipeline of talent, how many women, how many men, what is the educational background. And this was already in 2010, 11. So I think those are some of the leaders, as Anneli is here in the room as well, that they have started measuring very early on. And those results show. I was happy to see Kemira on the table as well.
Yes, and that is very true. What is measured is very often managed, and then it leads into concrete actions.
Well, our time is up, and it has been a really inspiring session. And thank you for all the speakers, all the commenters, for Professionals Finland, and Anneli and Nokia for letting us be here at Nokia boardroom. And also thank you all the participants there in the remote locations. You will get your report to your email, which you gave in the registration. And you can also find the report in our LinkedIn site, Nordic Business Diversity Index. So if you search at LinkedIn Nordic Business Diversity Index, you should find the page, and the report is there. Thank you, everyone. Let's move on and let's do some work.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you from my part as well. Just to let you know, if you didn't notice, there are several very interesting studies shared in the chat. So take those links, copy those links for yourself. And also here in Finland, there's a piece in Kauppalehti today, so check it out as well to see what they wrote about our index. Have a great day, and thank you everyone who has been supporting us.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.